Let's talk about the realities of modern human existence and how it relates to strength training, the strength and conditioning fitness industry. Um, if you look at our past, generally speaking, even 30 years ago, general physical preparedness is basically GPP, is your body's ability to do work. Okay, so over the last 30 years, the last 20 years particularly, I've noticed that people are just not doing as much outside in general. People aren't mowing their own grass anymore. You know, when I grew up, we were playing outside all day. Kids aren't doing that anymore. So the general level of physical preparedness of people is going down dramatically, even more alarming in children, because even with the adults that I train, like people that are in my age group, 40 plus, generally had pretty active childhoods. And so their brain was able to learn all these different movement patterns. And even though they haven't done them in a while, they still, after a little bit of work, can move in certain ways and do fairly well. Their brain kind of figures it out if stuff's given to them at a level where they can actually learn it, as opposed to like forcing adaptation on them. What I worry about is the children today. One of my clients messaged me yesterday, or one of my, former client, and she was at a soccer game, and there was a playground right there, and most of the kids were on their screens, and a lot of the parents were too. So those kids, instead of being on the playground or running around and playing games, it was beautiful out, like 78, 80 degrees. Some parents had set up tents for their kids so they could actually see their screens. So instead of those kids running around for several hours and playing outside, they're on a screen. So if you think about the cumulative effect of that over a 10-year period, one, they're not moving around as much, and children move and they play. That's how they develop their brains. So we've got kids that aren't active. I think one of the reasons that I survived some of the stupidity that I did to myself was the hours and hours of low-level cardiovascular activity I did as a child, riding my bike for hours, playing different pickup sports for hours and hours on end. Even when I was over 300 pounds, my resting heart rate never got over 60. Okay. So I weigh 255, and my resting heart rate overnight goes down into high 40s and mid 50s. So that aerobic base that I developed as a young child, and I walk a ton now. But what's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years when we have these children that do not develop that aerobic base? And I'm already seeing it, in the last 10 years, you got kids that are coming in with really high resting heart rates. And the problem is in the industry is because of Instagram, because of all the coaching that's available online, we've got these really advanced training protocols that are continuing to advance. And there's always going to be a select number of people that are going to adapt no matter what happens, okay? And there's going to be a select few people that are going to crash and burn no matter what happens, and then there's the middle, okay? So what happens is the training continues to go up and up and up and up in intensity, and the bottom, the middle, continues to go down, 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 and down, right? So in this business, what's going to have to happen is more people are going to have to start taking a holistic approach as far as walking outside, sleeping, resting more. More people in this industry, if they want to have clients for 10, 15, 20 years, are going to have to start bringing people in and bringing them in and getting them moving. Like Cressy talks about, doing different exercises paired together to bring up GPP instead of just doing like cardio. But there's going to have to be more of a almost like physical education type approach, because not only do we not have kids playing outside anymore, we don't have PE in school anymore, okay? So the population is getting less and less active, and the fitness industry is continuing to go up in intensity. I mean, I'm seeing, I think it's great because kids need to move around, but people are paying people to let children play. It's insane, right? Like 15 years, 20 years, when I was growing up, if you would have said, hey, bring your kid to this exercise class and pay us $20, people would have been like, what? You know, like, because we did all that stuff on our own. We climbed up on things and we played on the playground, and and kids will do this stuff if they're left to their own devices. But we actually have people that are paying. And essentially, what is a gym? You are basically paying to do manual labor. That's essentially what you're doing when you go to a gym. So we've basically outsourced everything. You know, people don't even mow their own grass anymore. I mentioned that before. So things are going to have to change drastically in the fitness industry to meet this massive amount of people that are on this downward trend. And the sad thing is when I talk to people, the people that are on this downward trend are looking up at the people that are on Instagram that are doing all this crazy stuff, that are ripped and shredded and whatever. And they go, well, there's no way I can get to that. And being ripped and shredded and a high performer isn't necessarily the best option for being healthy either. You want to be in the middle somewhere, right? So there's just a lot of things going on right here. But, you know, the bottom line is that we need to educate people to get outside more, to build their resiliency, okay? So the reason we want to get outside, the reason we want to walk, the reason we want to do lots of low-level activity is to prepare our body for more high-intense stress, right? And that's, in the past, that's what would have happened. You basically played outside as a kid, you played games, you learned, you jumped off a picnic table and went, ouch, that hurt my back. So you learned how to bend your knees when you land, right? You wrestled around on the floor, you learned how to do different things, you played tag, you learned all these things at your own pace and at your own level, and you built this resiliency through low-level activity. Same with, you know, if you look in the 50s, the 40s and 50s, the beach pictures, there's not one overweight person. Why? Most people were mowing grass. Most people had gardens. They were outside constantly. Most people, guys were manual laborers. They were car mechanics. They were putting roofs on houses. They were building houses. By, you know, everything today, the more automated we get, the less work we actually do. And so the fitness industry is going to have to take up the slack for that. And we have to understand that we're going to have to build that resiliency. And honestly, the sad part is we can definitely make a big improvement, but I really don't think we can undo. If you look at somebody who mows their grass 3 times a week, or shovels their driveway, you know, a couple times a week, you take out that activity over a period of 10 or 15 years, think about how much activity that is. That is a lot of activity, and its effect on the cardiovascular system, its effect on blood sugar management, all these different factors. As a society, we're going to have to be like, okay, what are we going to do? Like, are we going to have everything automated for us? So we're like Wall-E, we're basically just sitting there with a feeding tube in front of a screen. I mean, that's where we're going. So I see in the future 2 types of humans: people that choose to maybe flirt with modern life like I do and use the phones and things like that, but making sure that I'm getting a lot of time outside, making sure that I'm training at an appropriate level, that I'm being active, and parents that really make the time to get their kids outside and manage the screen time. You know, most of the high-level executives in Silicon Valley don't allow their kids to have screens. So I don't know. I just wanted to get on here and talk about that because I was messaging back and forth with some people yesterday about all of this stuff. And, you know, the fitness industry as a whole needs to have a more long-term approach to building resiliency in humans by having lots of low-level activity and sprinkling in intensity when needed to get the adaptation that's desired. Obviously, if you're an athlete or something like that, you know, there's going to be different variables depending on what your goals are. But for general health and wellness, we need a resilient human that can actually handle the stress that's applied to them. And then we can judge whether someone's adapting positively to stress or not by, you know, things like their HRV, things like their resting heart rate at night, you know, all these different things. We can look and see what adaptations we're driving and determine what's the best for the person. But overall, in general, we are going so far away from what our bodies are designed in a very, very, very quick period of time. And there's going to be massive consequences to that. So we have to continue to educate and talk to people about the importance of getting outside and just being generally active, and then, you know, sprinkling in some intensity where needed. So a few thoughts for you today. Hope you have a good day. Make sure you get outside.